Hi everybody and welcome to Take Your Time Gaming. I'm your captain, Wesley. Today I'm going to be kicking off a brand new Let's Play. I'm going to be playing the 1996 classic Titanic Adventure Out of Time. So Titanic was developed by Cyberflix and published by GTE Entertainment in the United States. It was released in 1996. Similar to Myst, Titanic is a pre-rendered stack of point-and-click cards, although it has a little bit better interface where you can actually kind of move three-dimensionally through the environment, but it is pre-rendered. And it was created on Cyberflix's DreamFactory engine, which is an in-house engine they use to render and develop everything. So Cyberflix actually spent 2 years researching this game, spending a lot of time to make it as historically and period accurate as possible. They even hired a screenwriter who worked on the Apollo 13 film to look through the Library of Congress and find photos of the Titanic, find drawings, whatever they had, whatever records they could find, to really try to be faithful to the original and to duplicate it in 3D, which is the first time that it had really been done on a computer before. So that was kind of a benefit of the time as well, is that the Library of Congress had just started archiving everything and had their online thing in 1994. So that was a resource they could use for this game to develop it and make it more historically accurate without having to spend a whole lot on budget. So unlike Myst, this game actually has characters that you can interact with, and you have to interact with them to progress the story. They're animated with a series of still frames instead of a QuickTime or a movie. This was using the Head Shop software program, which basically stitched together, kind of like South Park, different expressions on people's faces to give them the illusion of animation. It's kind of a little bit silly looking at times, but it's saved on disk space, and it let them put a lot more characters on a single CD-ROM because compression hadn't advanced to the point where they could compress video. So because there are so many characters, we're going to be interacting with those characters. That will help us progress the gameplay. There are multiple endings to this game. I do know that much. And there is a custom soundtrack, so it should be a pretty atmospheric experience. It was really cool to explore the Titanic at the time. In fact, this game came out in 1996, and the James Cameron Titanic movie came out in 1997, which really increased the sales of this game. In fact, the game had a $5 rebate if you brought a Titanic ticket stub, which is pretty good marketing. The game ended up selling 1.5 million copies by October of the year 2000. So for me personally, this game is a childhood memory. I didn't own the game personally, but my neighbor did, and I a lot of the times would watch over his shoulder as he walked up and down the corridors of the Titanic and explored the game. I remember it being spooky. For a 10-year-old, spooky's probably not the same as it is now, but I think it'll be fun and atmospheric, and really it's a cool look at the period because they spent a lot of time researching. So we'll see what I can remember about the Titanic, the ship itself, which I have read some about, and I've absorbed a little bit over the years. So this ought to be a fun playthrough. And similar to Myst, I'm going to be keeping a steno notebook like a good spy. And this will be used a lot less than the Myst notebook was, but for any puzzle game, I like to be able to write down what I've seen or combinations or important things that my brain probably won't remember long enough. So just another way to absorb the material. So anyway, grab yourself a tasty beverage and let's get started. So here's the opening menu. We have two options: begin our mission or tour the ship. I think we want to begin our mission with our first class ticket here.
Once again, today's top stories. London has endured another night of German bombing. Most damage was concentrated in the East End. The RAF has struck enemy aerodromes in Le Havre and the Low Countries. In Russia, further German losses are reported around Leningrad. In Asia, the American fortress at Corregidor is still defiant, but Japanese forces are reported nearing the Burmese oil fields. And that concludes the news summary. We now return you to our music program.
Very interesting. So I'm in my apartment, my flat, I guess, in London.
You're 2 weeks late with the
guys. My landlady is very upset with me. Presumably I have not paid her in some time. Looks like I've just got a one-bedroom, pretty tiny little flat. The plaster's flaking off the walls. Interestingly, it is the 1940s because we were just hearing about World War II.
Today's top stories.
And
London has endured another night
I'm going to turn off the radio here.
Most
I guess I can, surprisingly. But so, while I explore here, on my mantelpiece is this beautiful model of the Titanic. Not sure why I have that in the 40s. Memories. Titanic sinks 1,250 perish. So I've got this clipping from the wreck of the Titanic. April 16th, 1912. So the 14th was the night of the incident. It sank in the wee hours, I guess, of the 15th, and then was reported on the 16th. So this newspaper documents that. And the few survivors, I think there was over 2,000 people on board the Titanic, and 1,250 perished. So not a very uplifting story, I guess. But why do I have this giant model of it on my couch here? Some cobwebs here up in the corner of the flat. And London, he's watching you. So make sure you support the war effort. I'm just gonna look around my living quarters here. The Wreck of the Titan, or Futility, by Morgan Robertson. And an excerpt from the Times, April 19th, 1912. Lord, Lady Lambeth, obituary. Lord and Lady Lambeth have died in the Titanic disaster. The couple has been missing since the sinking and were not among the survivors rescued by the Carpathia last Monday. Many of the rescued attest to seeing the couple together before the ship sank. The White Star Line will confirm only that the Lambeths were passengers on the ocean liner. There were no children. Lady Lambeth was the daughter of the late Duke of Norwich. Okay, so we have a clipping of the obituary of the Lambeths. We have a picture of Winston Churchill on the wall. Next to the radio, we have a little booklet called the Tellurian Quarterly and an ashtray. Let's see if we can play with this radio settings and get anything else.
Once again, today's top stories.
Silence. This is suitably thematic. It almost sounds like the Moonlight Sonata. I like this dark music so I can live my depressed life with my cockroach cupboard full of cockroaches and cleaning powder and a box of tea which is empty. And because it's wartime, or because I can't afford it, one of the two, I have powdered milk, powdered eggs, some vitamin-enriched spaghetti to ward off rickets or whatever it is, I guess, and cocoa. So powdered everything, but it is wartime, so that's kind of understandable. So you navigate using the WASD configuration, and then you just click on things as you see them, which is slightly different from Myst. Instead of having static cards, at least you can rotate and click about with nice pre-rendered movements between the two. So we're here at my writing desk, I guess, with the drawer open. And a memo dated the 10th of August 1914, 2 years after the sinking of the Titanic. His Majesty's government regrets to inform you that your services in the office of the Secret Service are no longer needed. Termination to be effective immediately. With regrets, Commander T.S.D. Hibble, Group Leader. So this is my discharge from the Secret Service. So I was some sort of spy for His Majesty's government. Interestingly, I have a ticket from the Hindenburg, which is going from Frankfurt to Lakehurst, New Jersey, which was, if I remember right, the ill-fated flight. And you can see here a bit of burn or tearing on nearby. So, the German Zeppelin Company, $400 ticket plus $3 tax for May 3rd, 1937. Interesting. I wonder why I have that. Uh-oh. I didn't get a chance to explore very much before apparently the air raid sirens go off.
Sneaking out, are you? I want the money.
She wants her money. Boom. Okay, so apparently I was just bombed. My flat in London.
The past,
Well, we see this.
forever locked in regret. But what if the past could be changed? "30 years have come and gone since the night that saw the end of a world, my world. The service needed someone on the Titanic. They chose me. I was to wait for a signal from my contact, so I remained in my cabin. I left only once Georgia was on board. And that's when it came. There'd be no second chance. It was Sunday, April 14th. Too late, you see, for the Titanic, for me. What if I'd met with my contact, prevented disaster? What if the past could be changed? What then?
It's a beautiful rendering of the ship in 3D. It's supposedly very historically accurate, and in fact, the renderings from this game have been used in several documentaries just because it's so accurate historically. It was all based on accurate historical documentation, photographs, and such. 9:30 p.m. on board the RMS Titanic. Okay, I'm in my very stately quarters with many my beautiful steamer trunk and this rich wooden wall paneling. This is a really nice room. Someone's at the door.
Good evening. I am Smethels, your steward.
Hi, Smethels.
And if I may say so, it is good to see you up and about. You've been in your cabin the whole voyage. A touch of the mal de mer, was it?
I was a little bit seasick. Luckily, I have this beautiful basin, which you're going to have to clean out later. I'm sorry.
Seasickness can be quite unpleasant, especially if it's one's first crossing. Since you haven't been out of your cabin, may I instruct you on how to get assistance while on board the Titanic?
I'm going to just say yes, I need some help.
Very good. We of the White Star Line hope that your stay on board Titanic is as relaxing as possible. As you explore the ship, please bear in mind the following advice. The
Okay.
mouse is your hands, the keys your feet. If you find the screen too dark or too bright, follow the directions on the control screen help panel or consult your manual on adjusting your monitor. To find the control panel help and other features, click on the life preserver at the bottom of the screen. The control panel has a help button, as well as a quit and save game feature. You may also adjust the volume. Test the settings by clicking on the black knob. You may also switch the theme music on or off. After making any adjustments, click OK to return to your current game. Wandering the ship, if you notice a hand, it indicates something to click on. May I suggest you do so? Several personal items in your room, a brown satchel, and a pocket watch are quite useful to you during your voyage.
So I
Take
need
them
them.
with you. You shall want to
Okay.
converse with other passengers. If you fail to understand them, click on their face. They will repeat their last sentence. The purser. His office is on C deck. just off the forward grand stairs. The elevator, or lift as we call it, has an attendant who can direct you to various sections of the ship. The
Didn't we do
lifts
this
are
joke in
located
Myst?
behind the forward grand staircase. Lastly, you may always find me by returning to your cabin, C-73, and ringing the bell to the right of the door. Your correspondence.
Can you bring me room service?
2,200 on board, and they all want messages delivered promptly.
Well,
even if it is
yeah.
1912, and the Titanic, the most advanced means of sea conveyance ever devised, I still have only two hands. 2,200 on board, and they all want messages delivered promptly. Even if it is 1912, and the Titanic, the most advanced means of sea conveyance ever devised, I still have only two hands. Here, a map
Yes,
of the
Smevels.
ship for you.
Thank you,
Compliments
Smevels.
of the White Star Line. I have taken the liberty of indicating your cabin, C-73. Of course, on a Sunday evening at this hour, there won't be many people out. Will there be anything else?
No, I think that's it, Smevels. I could use some tacos, though. I don't know if you have tacos yet in 1912. I think probably there's some... I don't think Mexico is very friendly with us in 1912, or at least the U.S. Who's PP?
A young lady. A most insistent young lady.
Well, that's good that I have allies or friends of some kind on board.
The electric camel, an exercise device. They say it is good for the liver. I wouldn't know.
He doesn't
It's
exercise his
located in
liver.
the gymnasium,
Not
on
in
the
that
boat
way.
deck, on the starboard side. That's the right side, in case you had not been informed.
Yes, starboard port, port side's left side, fore and aft, or the bow and the stern. The bow being the front and the stern being the back.
Very good. Have you unpacked? You'll find your trunk key in your bag on the bed. And remember your personal effects, your watch and if you require additional assistance, please ring the bell by the door. Good night.
You seem very familiar with my personal effects for a butler, but what if I call him back? Is this call him back?
It appears you have forgotten something. Have you checked your dresser? Or the bed for your personal belongings? Such items can be useful to you.
Oh, that was very abrupt. He's like, why did you call me back here? You have all your goodies. I've told you where they are. I know everything about you, more than you do. So we, listening to the intro when we came in here, apparently we were a spy. Judging by the discharge papers that we saw from the government, we were no longer necessary for the Secret Service. But now we're back on board and we find that probably the reason our mission failed in the first place back in 1912, we were on the Titanic when it sank, trying to complete this mission, and presumably because it sank, that kept us from completing our mission because there was much more important stuff to attend to while the ship was sinking. So now we've been sent back in time with the possibility of finishing our mission again and avoiding this dishonorable discharge and being blown up in a crummy London flat during the war. So we've been thrust back in time knowing now that the Titanic will sink inevitably. And so we have been given a second chance to change history, perhaps. I don't know if we'll be able to prevent the ship from sinking, but at least we'll be able to finish our mission, I think. This looks like my brown satchel, which I've just picked up off the bed. Inside which is the key to my steamer trunk, which we saw earlier. So I don't see anything else on the bed. I can turn the lamp off and take a nap here, but I've been in my quarters all night, so I'm ready to get out and mingle with the people on the ship. I'm in first class. I'm a young secret agent, apparently. So let's explore the rest of this stuff. Slick our hair back with some whatever the 1912 version of Brill Cream is, and go out on the town. So the Titanic was the flagship of the White Star Line, which was the only other really competing British passenger line was the Cunard lines, and the Titanic was built along with the Olympic and eventually the what was the other ship, the Britannic, to be the three top-of-the-line cruise ships to compete with the Cunard line and to compete with the German passenger liners, steamers that existed at the time. The Olympic actually sailed as a passenger liner. The Titanic obviously sailed as a passenger liner, but was sunk on its maiden voyage, this voyage. But the Britannic actually never became a passenger liner and went on to serve in the war as a medical frigate to support soldiers. So interestingly, only the Olympic actually served in its original role. The Titanic did, but only one time before sinking. So that's a hard time for everyone, I think, for the White Star Lines especially, and it's amazing that they survived the cost of the Titanic sinking. So here's a beautiful menu. Hors d'oeuvres, oysters, cream of barley, salmon, filet mignon and chicken, some vegetables, lamb, a variety of dinner. So nothing but the finest food on board, with Waldorf pudding, peaches and chartreuse jelly, and ice cream. I don't see a drink menu, but we are on duty as a spy and must remain in control of our faculties. This is some pretty nice rendering. I mean, it's all pre-rendered, but still, the texturing and everything is pretty good. I don't think there's a... Did I lose any change in the couch? No, I don't see any change lost in the couch. You never know. A few peanuts, maybe. The lamp by the side table. This appears to be the window, so I must be up on the upper decks and not down in the lower decks, the second class of the steerage cabins with the tiny portholes. I actually have a proper window to the outside. Yep, so it is a porthole. Lovely view of the night. So my steam trunk won't let me click on it, but if I dig in my bag here, I can grab the key. This, I guess, puts this in my active inventory slot, and then I can grab the key and apply it to the trunk, I think? Yes. So inside my steamer trunk, I presumably all my underwear. I think that's all they had in the 1912s. I mean, you didn't have your iPhone or whatever inside here. Although I did seem to bring a gramophone, it looks like. So let's click on the gramophone. Some assembly required, I guess. Okay. Crank the knob.
His Majesty's government has assigned an agent of the Crown to rendezvous with you on board the Titanic. Remain in your cabin until your contact gives you further instructions. After completion of all your assignments on board, book passage to remain on the ship and return to Southampton for your next assignment. For a more in-depth report of the international situation in the spring of 1912, please review the white paper included as part of this briefing. That is all.
This message will now
Majesty's
self-destruct.
government has assigned an agent of the Crown to rendezvous with you on board the Titanic.
Yep.
His
Okay.
Majesty's government has
Well, I'm not done in there yet. So I have learned that my duty is on board. I am supposed to meet with presumably this PP person, who may be my contact, because they said you'll be contacted to meet up with them. So let's see what else is in here besides my skivvies. A packet of confidential information. This is a map of current 1912 Europe. France, Russia, Germany, here in Hungary together. So perhaps this is a list of alliances here with this chunk here, and the Allies, France and Britain and Russia against Germany and Austria-Hungary and Serbia. So this must be my intelligence packet. Central powers, the German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Neutral is the United States because we're far away. And Britain's allies, France and Russia. as of 3/3/1912 in Whitehall, London. There are many pages, it looks here, of the history. I'm not going to read these just yet. I'm going to check out the rest of these drawers. So it does look like there's a big drawer here. Interesting. So this drawer contains what looks like looks like the Enigma, the old German encoding machine, cryptography machine. So here you have the ability to input a cipher, looks like, where you can select what your cipher will be. You can turn the device on, or maybe this switches between decode and encode, but it looks like I can click each one of these. The switch doesn't seem to do anything. That looks like a light bulb, but it doesn't light up. I see two wires here that are not connected to anything, and this says dry cell info, or negative and positive, so perhaps I hook up these wires. This is the battery at the top, and that should power this ciphering device. And indeed, now I get power. I don't know what uses I have for this yet. Let's type a message. Let's do the old-fashioned. This is not a QWERTY keyboard. I guess it hadn't been invented yet, or if it had, they didn't make it for their ciphers. Okay, so this number up here is changing as I enter information. Let's encode what I've just sent. And for more information, check out our website at cyberflix.com. Interesting. So I don't know what purpose this serves, but we can decode and encode, so perhaps PP will share with us some classified intelligence we must decode using this cipher machine. Historically, in World War II, the Enigma machine was what the Nazis notoriously used to transmit codes back and forth, which was eventually broken by Alan Turing when he had invented the computer and was able to finally just brute force a solution. But for now, we're going to assume that this is still secure and has not been broken by counterintelligence, and we don't have anything we can apply here, so perhaps we could get a note out of our bag and run that through the cipher. So, interesting. I'm going to make a note of this. What could this cipher machine be for, except for the fact that we are a top secret spy? Can freshen myself up in the sink. Turn the water on. There's nothing else to do here. I can't do anything with this vanity. I am apparently a vampire because I have no reflection. I have picked up my pocket watch, so my pocket watch was here on this vanity. Inside the drawer of the vanity. Meet me tonight on deck. Tell no one. Georgia. So perhaps I have a meeting with Georgia. I don't know if she is related to PP. So we've collected some intelligence. There's nothing else in these drawers. Doing some sleuthing. Electric lighting on board, very impressive. The ship is steam powered, obviously. But interestingly, because it was steam powered, it had its own power plant on board, and everything was run electrically, which was pretty modern for the time. There's no gas lamps or anything of that sort. I've got my satchel. I've got my watch. Before I leave the room, I want to go back to the steamer and read that intelligence to you all. Feel free to skip ahead if you would like. But just to give us some historical context of what's going on in the world of 1912. The map of the Allies, the secret report talking about the major players here, before the war has broken out. And now I will launch into this description, this intelligence that I've been provided. This spring of 1912 Europe is... I'm going to start that again. This spring of 1912, Europe is the dominant center of the civilized world, bursting with energy and power. It is also a house of cards. Cobbled together by diplomats and old dynasties at the Congress of Vienna in 1815 to restore order after the devastating Napoleonic Wars, this structure of nation-states has endured for nearly a century, but rumbling subterranean faults threaten to plunge all we have built into the abyss of mechanized global war. Despite such dangers, English liberals, intellectuals, and progressive businessmen choose to believe the sanguine writer Norman Agnell. His book, The Great Illusion, has become a publishing phenomenon, electrifying the Oxbridge campuses with his postulate, "War is unthinkable. A modern war would be terrible and so disruptive of the global economic system," he says, "that both victor and vanquished would be devastated. Global finance and economic interdependence is so great," he argues, "that no nation will risk war." Nothing is further from the truth, as you shall read. In fact, peace totters on the brink, pushed near the edge by Europe's economic and colonial rivalries and a system of competing alliances. The Central Powers of Germany and Austria-Hungary stand toe-to-toe with a looser, more ambiguous association, the allies of the Triple Entente, comprising Great Britain, France, and Russia. Meanwhile, in the Balkans, the contending forces of Slav nationalism and great power expansion may well provide the fuel for a terrible inferno, which, if you'll remember, the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand is what kicked off World War I, the act kind of that ignited all the flames that they're describing here. There is hope, however. London politicians may be pessimists, but Britannia still rules the waves, and trade, and banking, and the realm of ordained self-confidence. Our vast overseas empire stretches from Suez to Cape Town, from Persia to Burma, to treaty ports in China. We are linked by language, culture, and commerce with the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Our chief rival is Germany. Her leader, the Kaiser, has doubled her army since 1892 and races to build a navy to rival the British fleet. Germany's trade policies, tariffs, enlightened social welfare services, and large, dynamic, well-educated labor force now boast an efficient, modern industrial system that outbids and undersells Britain around the world. To secure her position, Germany forged military alliances with Austria-Hungary in 1879. The result? These Central Powers now dominate continental Europe. Desperate for allies, Republican France has swallowed her principles, clasped the hand of the weak but autocratic Tsar, loaned Russia millions of francs to keep the inept, corrupt government afloat, and invested heavily in Russian industry, railroads, and expansion across Siberia to Asia. Every European power wants Asian markets, and Russia especially covets warm water ports on the Pacific. Generally, Britain has stood apart. But we have repeatedly foiled Russia's efforts to get access to the Mediterranean Sea, and we will continue to do so. This Franco-Russian alliance has increased German paranoia and insecurity. The Kaiser shouts foul, feeling isolated and encircled, but in fact, Russia is a lumbering behemoth. Our intelligence reports it is shackled by corruption, inefficiency, and an inept autocrat. Escalating scandals swirl around the German-born Tsarina Alexandria and the mystic monk Rasputin, who seems to ease her son's hemophilia with his psychic powers. Impotent Bolsheviks dream of a revolution but achieve little. Many have taken refuge in Austria and Germany, always eager to create mischief for the Tsar. The Central Powers' state security both welcomes and encourages the Bolsheviks in the hopes they will overthrow the Tsar. Germany is spoiling for a conquest. Some insignificant African territories fly the German Kaiser's flag, as do a few ports in China and some Pacific islands, but the American open-door policy to China and its Pacific fleet limits further German aspirations. Thus foiled in Asia, the Kaiser has paraded his gunboats in Morocco, but we and the French were there first and faced him down with a combination of guns and diplomacy. He has retreated in a fury, but now makes plans for a Berlin to Baghdad railway to open the Middle East to German trade and influence. In the face of German provocation, we have taken pains to cement our relationship to the French. 8 years ago, in 1904, they signed the Entente Cordiale, a friendly agreement. France acknowledges Britain's prevailing influence in Egypt, Britain gives her blessing to French control of Morocco, and our navies now share military maneuvers. France has also nudged us into a similarly loose accord with Russia. In 1907, we signed an Anglo-Russian convention that formalizes our separate spheres of influence in Persia and eases our historic conflict over the Crimea. We still refuse to make military commitments, but the European House of Cards is now divided between the Allies and the Central Powers. In Austria-Hungary, the doddering old Emperor Franz Joseph has sat on the throne since 1850. His is an empire of heterogeneous people, ruled by an incompetent bureaucracy and gross inequality. Intelligence reports that he is a dull fellow, old-fashioned and conservative. He tends to be the elaborate rituals of the Habsburg court, works long days like an assiduous clerk, and rules over an explosive mix of Germans, Hungarians, Czechs, Poles, Italians, Slovenes, Romanians, Serbs, Croatians, Bosnians, and Jews. Conflicts rage over language restrictions and economic discriminations based on nationality and the competing religious loyalties of Roman Catholics, Orthodox Christians, and Muslim Slavs. 400 years of Ottoman rule has left its mark on the region. Many wish it back. As Emperor Franz Joseph dithers and society waltzes to Strauss and amuses itself with the novel theories of the mind Dr. Sigmund Freud, the Balkans threaten to explode with Serbia as the flashpoint. In 1908, young Turk military officers rose in revolt against the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. In the breach, Austria annexed the old Turkish provinces of Bosnia-Herzegovina. The annexation infuriates Serbia, which wants Bosnia as a part of a greater Serbia, and the Russians, who see themselves as mentors for their Slav brothers, the Serbs. It has also spurred Bulgaria to declare independence. These actions have inflamed further nationalist aspirations, which led to last year's Balkan War, when Bulgaria, Serbia, and Greece joined forces against Turkey. Today, terrorism flourishes. Just this year, a Bosnian student, a member of a Greater Serbia secret society, tried to assassinate the Hungarian governor of Croatia. Properly financed and directed Serbian nationalist movements could create a serious international crisis. Spoilers, it does. Lastly, though it still adheres to neutrality, the United States is a major force in the Pacific, seeing herself as China's protector. Washington does face a potential problem with Mexico. So we're not friendly. The revolution there has unleashed a tiger. The new Madero government has failed to halt corruption and spur reform, and rebel leaders are staging armed raids against it. There is fear in Washington that such unrest may spill over onto American soil. Events, if manipulated, could easily direct the anger of the Mexican masses towards the United States. Such an event would delight the Central Powers, which prefer the U.S. stay out of Europe's affairs, especially as tensions escalate here. A United States preoccupied with Mexico would offer no help to Britain and France if we went to war with the German and Austro-Hungarian empires. As the players line up toe-to-toe, their armies are poised to defend both national honor and questionable allies, while their presses rave at a fever pitch. All that is needed is one key event to plunge Europe into war. The world watches to see which side will blink first. For nearly a century, someone always has. End. Okay, so that has basically given us the story leading up to World War I, with Germany and Austria-Hungary, with some allies to the south, beset on all sides by Britain, France, and Russia here. So, understandably, being flanked would make any potentially hostile country nervous. So with all these tensions fraying, it's going to take just a few events to push countries into the brink of war, which eventually happens. Like we mentioned, the Britannic becomes a Royal Navy ship, a hospital ship, providing medical support during the war. But we are here on the Titanic, and we are in the lap of luxury, and I think this is an excellent place to stop this episode. We have been transported back in time, a failed spy, now given a second chance to redeem ourselves in our final mission aboard the Titanic. Smevels, our manservant or assistant or onboard butler bellhop, is here to provide us everything we need, and when we pick up in the next episode, we will go try to find the elusive PP and meet with Georgia on the deck. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Cheers.